incredible weekend of sport coming up as it's all to play for in Super Saturday of the Gallagher Premiership. Joining myself and the columnists today to preview that weekend as well as discuss the laws of the game is former RFU and international referee JP Doyle. One round left of Gallagher Premiership fixtures, and after a weekend in which two teams in particular laid claims to the throne of the top four, 7 teams remain in contention for 4 spots. Joining us today to preview that final round of fixtures, as well as a customary Rugby Paper Podcast discussion around laws of the game, is former RFU referee and now Scotland high referee coach. I think I'm saying that right. JP Doyle. How are you, JP?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, up here in just up in here, Perth, Scotland, enjoying some lovely, dry, beautiful weather. So, yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Really, really enjoyable.
Is it Scotland referee coach or Scotland high performance referee coach? Sorry if I got your title wrong.
I don't think anyone worries too much about the title. The paperwork says high performance head coach, which just means I work with the pro refs, but obviously there's some pathway stuff involved in there as well, bringing people through, looking at what's next and putting structures in place of how do you go from refereeing senior rugby in Scotland to URC professional rugby, in essence.
How many refs do you have on the pro books up there?
We have 3. We have 3. So we have I guess the easiest to do it in alphabetical order. We have Mike Adamson, we have Holly Davidson, and Sam Grove White are our 3 full-time referees, and then we have a pathway panel as well.
And it's coming up to it was a new role, yours, and it was 2 years ago that you started, more or less?
Yeah, just a little over 2 years now. So when I finished up with MLR, and it was an opportunity, my wife was up here teaching as well. So she's head of learning at Great Clown School. So it was a good opportunity to jump in and get involved here. So I really, really enjoyed it. I'm a teacher by trade. So I'm probably happier now coaching than ever was reffing. So I'm sure a lot of other people are happy I'm coaching and reffing, but that's by the by.
And obviously it's a few years now since you were an RFU referee, but you were just telling us that you're having a cycling race with Luke Pearce this morning. So you're still in touch with a lot of the boys of the RFU.
Yeah, as long as he shows up. Sometimes he's awfully busy playing golf or doing something silly. But yeah, no, we just meet on Zwift, and my brother in Canada will join us as well. So yeah, it's dads in lycra without having to go in public, which I think
that's going to be about 2 in the morning, JP.
Yeah, it's called the 5. It's called the 5:05. So it's 5:05 in the morning in Canada. My brother gets up and he's the one who drives it. So yeah, 10:05 and 5:05 in Canada. It's called the it's dads in lycra, but thankfully we're not in public, so no one has to see the shame of it.
Yeah, I'm sure the rest of Scotland's thankful for that, to be fair. Who's the best cyclist out of the 3 of you?
Well, I'm definitely not going to say my brother, am I? I'm not going to say Luke, and I'm not going to say Luke Pearce. So we'll leave it hanging there that I don't actually have to say something so arrogant. But if I'm left with those 3 options, who would you pick if it was your brother and someone you used to work with?
You should make life easy for yourself and get Ed Morrison and Tony Spreadbury as your main competitors. Then you're bound to win.
I don't think any sort of medical insurance would cover that, though. Yeah.
And I can't see him get up at 5:05 either.
No,
that's true. Maybe 5:05 in the evening.
5:05 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still a daiquiri time.
Just in terms of you're still very much involved in the world game, and you were a referee consultant for ITV at Rugby World Cup 2023. What was that like? Obviously, you were a Rugby World Cup referee at 2015. You were still an RFU referee at 2019. How was it from a sort of a more bystander analyst perspective rather than being in the thick of it?
Yeah, that was a really, really enjoyable role. They let me cultivate it the way I'm a big fan of not liking and wanting to listen to referees on TV shows. So I was able to hide myself in behind and be someone who supplied information. So while the commentators were working, whether it was with Miles Harrison or Nick, I would supply information about decisions in behind. And then if something really big, of course, I could give an opinion. But for those in the studios, I could go down pre-game, post-game, during the game and feed information in, so they knew when you were hearing from a Brian O'Driscoll, a Brian Habana, Sam Warburton, or John Barkley, you want to hear from them because they're the experts in the field. You don't want to hear from me. So I was able to give them the ticky-tacky stuff around what the referees, why they were making those decisions, rather than, oh, here, can you imagine in a World Cup if every game they cut to JP Doyle? Like, do you remember Italia 90? Be like the little chow every time a goal was scored. Remember the little mascot appeared on the TV? Like, get rid of it by game 5. So it was good that I was only ever used very sporadically, and only my mother could miss me. So yeah, happy with that.
Do you have a view, JP, on retired referees going into roles? I mean, we have, I think Garces is in some fairly high
France,
high role with France. And then if you just switch over to football, we had all the fuss around Nottingham Forest. Was it Clattenburg? When the Nottingham Forest thing sort of broke open, and there was a hell of a lot of stuff said very quickly, with none of which seemed entirely appropriate to professional sport, if I'm honest. Do you sort of have a view on the dangers of people in your position going into roles which actually cause more problems than they solve?
Yeah, and I was really clear around what I wanted to do with that ITV role, that nobody wants to hear my opinion. Nobody in the world, I promise you that, whether it's in my house or outside my house. But what people want is, how did the referee make this decision? And then let the experts debate it out. So if you take football, Carragher and Neville can debate it out. Give them the information. The referee can see it this way, or he can see it that way. Now, I think the balance of power is on A rather than B. And you saw that in the opening game of the World Cup with the red card for Curry and the yellow card for Carreras. There are incidents where these aren't black and white. So you want to give people the why the decisions are being made, and then let people debate. What is sport if we're not debating it? If it was just tennis, Hawkeye, ball in, ball out, fine. But even Hawkeye doesn't work. I was watching, they had it at having in the French Open for the first time this year. So they were trialing it in Madrid and Rome and all these places. But because the clay moves, it doesn't work as well. So they're having to have unlimited challenges, and it causes debate. And even in tennis, they're debating it, let alone cricket, rugby union, or soccer. So what is the point of having a referee analyst? What are you bringing him in for? And with the ITV stuff, we very much made it around supplying the experts with better information rather than, oh, let's go to JP to see what the absolute outcome is, because I'm as wrong as the next person. So why would you listen to me?
Tell us a bit more about the actual coaching role there, JP, because I think everybody understands coaching a rugby team, but coaching referees, your elite refs and your next halfway down, how does that differ, or how do you think that differs from coaching players? Because you assume they all know the laws. Do we start from that assumption that all the refs know the laws? No, this is a serious point, Dewey. You assume that everybody knows the laws. So are you teaching them interpretation? Are you teaching them count to 5 before you make some decisions? Are you counselling them if they get a bad, they make a mistake and they're feeling down on a Monday morning and they need building up again? What's your role?
Yeah, it's all of that. I think the first thing is to set a pathway. What is a Scottish referee? So if I said to you guys, tell me, you guys are watching rugby, when I'd be disrespectful, probably 100 years between you all, right? So if I said to you, what's an Australian ref? You'd go, oh, I can see in my mind's eye what that looks like, or an Irish ref, or a French ref. What does a French ref doing a lines test look like? What does he sound like? What does he move like? What are the decisions like? So we had to build a DNA here of what a Scottish referee was, because we've had a dearth of top-end Scottish referees for a while. Now, I think we're on a real precipice of that flipping really nicely with some fantastic summer appointments coming up. And we're building up how many are up at the top end as well. If we have a methodology of what Scottish referees are, when we get down to these 50-50 calls, or these yin and yang calls, bang-bang plays as they call them in the NFL, we know what that Scottish ref's going to do. And we, rather than it being JP Doyle, the coach's opinion, it can be the Scottish DNA would do this here. Once you have that, and once it becomes a regular and a continuous behavior and pathway, the teams become more familiar with it. So Scottish referees have they have the lowest match duration because they're really strong around not using TMOs unless necessary. They have a very good penalty count because they don't give a lot of cheap penalties in certain areas. They have a high turnover rate at breakdown. So jacklers have quite a lot of success around Scottish referees. So these are sort of DNA things that teams can understand and know around what the makeup of any Scottish referee comes to do on Osprey's Leinster game or a Cardiff Benetton game or whatever it may be. They understand it, so then they zero you because they know what we're going to do. You then are get taken away from their concern or anxiety or reduced. So therefore, the referee can just get on with the game. So when we're reviewing, like you would any scrum half play, I think it's more like reviewing a golfer in a way. Did you hit fairways and greens? Were you trying to hit the draw all day? Were you trying to play the fade? We're playing the middle of greens, but you went for the pin here. You know, why did you go out of what we were doing game plan here rather than, hey, look at this clip. This should have been a holding versus a roll away. It's irrelevant. Is what do we do here when this is a slightly gray call? And I call it embracing the gray, living in the gray. It's not a black and white. If the guy's offside or he's knocked it on or he scored the try, they're ipso facto decisions. So they're right or wrong. And the audit, so that the people who audit the games, the URC selectors, they'll audit the game. They'll do that. They don't need me for that.
That's very interesting, AJ, because I'm just trying to think of the incident, but Mike Adamson recently got some heat for not using the TMO.
Cardiff Ulster, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you've established that territory that he doesn't go automatically to the TMO, if he thinks he can make a decision without, I think people will get to understand and like that. But you're in that awkward interim period at the moment there where some people are not used to that. They think, oh, that is a TMO. You have to go there for TMO. And he's saying, no, I've seen enough.
Yeah, he's saying, I'm a referee. I'm paid to be here. I'm selected because I can do this. Therefore, I'm going to make decisions. And what that frees up the TMO to do is, if you're clearly wrong, if you're empirically wrong, the TMO can say, hold on a sec, you're actually going to need to check this one. And that's where it comes in. So in the Cardiff game, we can't see live whether East Carey knocks it on or not. So you have you have to let it play out because we're not going to jump in when we don't know. And we're not going to say, hey, look, I have to definitely check it. You make a live call on the pitch and then you let the TMO sweep to see if there's a problem. And he goes, oh, I actually have the angle here from the far side corner. He has put his arm out. It's not a catching action. He's deliberately knocked it on. You're going to have to come back. Now, there's mechanics around how he could have sold that better, right? Let's put it up. Let's show it, that one clip. Let's show it. Okay, fine. So the Cardiff understand, Ulster understand, everyone can see it, and there's a better sell. But these things are difficult in live fire. You know, everybody has a plan till you're punched in the face. Yeah, so, sure. You know, in these big moments, it's hard to get it exactly right. Yeah. But you see this week, Mike Adamson had a red card and how well it was handled in that scenario. Sam Grove-White had a penalty try in the Leinster Ospreys game, which live wasn't given as it was just tackle into touch. But it turns out actually, and we go down a process and it comes out quite nicely. So nothing is perfect, and we're humans, so we make mistakes, which is fine. You build that into what we're doing. But if you stay within the protocol of what you're trying to achieve, you're going to be more successful than reacting to everything that happens. Yeah. And that way, a game can be 1 hour, 42 minutes, or it can be 2 hours, 10 minutes. Which one do you want, guys? You know, we check everything. You're getting 2 hours, 10 minutes. Even the NFL doesn't check everything anymore. Even baseball has brought in a shot clock. Yeah. You know, even the longest of games are now shortening.
How much are we in a limbo, though, JP? Because, you know, fundamentally, we've gone down the route of applying technology to refereeing. And a lot of the technology is actually, the way it's being applied in rugby is not very good. There aren't enough camera angles. There isn't enough resource, probably because the game hasn't got enough money, but there isn't enough resource in terms of the, you know, the VT, the numbers of people on the VT, on the machines, getting the clips ready. You compare it with NFL, it's incredibly clunky. You know, the process of the decision being made on field, you know, I mean, sometimes it can be interesting and sometimes it can be, you know, very convoluted. And I sort of think that rugby's in a limbo land, really, when it comes to, you know, when it comes to the technology. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, talking about the laws and how many referees, have an encyclopedic knowledge of the laws. I mean, keeping up with the laws, given the number of law changes that there are at the moment, is virtually impossible. And, I mean, how many of them really know the law book inside out? And, how possible is it to, particularly when you get laws which are written in such a way that they contradict each other sometimes?
Yeah, and there are. So let me take the first thing first there, the actual use of technology. So as soon as you bring in technology, you take the premise of a referee, an umpire, whatever sport it may be, you take the infallibility of them away. And you take the ability for them to be wrong and you to understand it and be okay with it away, because now you have a mechanism to potentially get the right decision every time, potentially. So that in itself inherently changes behaviors. And you look at all sports across the world, which one is technology absolutely ace in? Baseball, they still debate, they have the home plate, they debate that, and whether it's a foul ball or not, that gets debated. Goal line technology in football, how far the ball has to be across the line before it's actually across the line, and all these sorts of things. The infallibility problem with the technology is it doesn't give us a clean outcome. So I think we need to drive more around what we believe the referee should do live, and then what clear and obvious is one of these catch-alls and then becomes gray in itself. The clear and obvious means everyone should agree, and we're never going to get that. Most tight decisions, and you look at the Cardiff Ulster game, you end up with room splitters. And we have to drive the narrative that sometimes we're not going to all agree on the outcome. And that's where the bringing in of technology, even if you had 1,000 cameras, if you had 1,000 cameras, it'd just slow it down more. Even in the NFL, the one you cited as less clunky, which it is, but there's still huge problems around the holding on the last play of the Super Bowl. Was it a catch? Julian Edelman, there's still a million debates over the very, when you get into, the more cameras you have, the more fine incidents you're going to drive into. So the biggest problem is you inherently, when you play Sunday League football or when you're playing a local tennis match, you inherently believe in the referee or the umpire. They call it in, they call it out. You just got to go with it, and you understand that that's what's going to happen. As soon as you flip that to actually, I as the practitioner can be right every time over the ref, that changes everything. It changes the dynamic of everything. And like Schrodinger's cat, once you've opened that box, you now have an outcome. And I think it's a big difference.
And that gets even more complex when you get a decision like the Carl Dixon incident with Danny Kerr, where what happens is that the refereeing body, after the event, you've got a public view on it, which is almost unanimous in that the laws were transgressed in probably 2 or 3 ways, quite possibly. But the body then comes out and supports the referee's decision.
Yeah, and inherently, I don't mind them supporting the referee and pointing out blah, blah, blah. But I think you need to have a direction of travel at the start of the year to say, what we will do is we as a refereeing body will back referees where it's practical and possible, and understanding that there may have been another outcome. But when you say this is the only outcome and this is absolutely delineated correct, you've got a problem, because rugby is a grey sport. It is, even if you take the most widely debated thing, putting the ball straight into the scrum is grey, because the middle of the scrum is as wide as the ball, and all the ball has to do is touch it. So you don't actually, in law, have to roll the ball in straight. That's a misnomer. So when we get to the second point of your question is,
I'd go back. Let's just go back on the ball straight at the scrum.
Now you've done it.
You've not long, JP. We're at 10:05.
I'm going to go back to bed.
If the ball is put in a ball's width to one side, I think that, or half a ball's width or whatever, I think that most people can sort of get a read on that. And say, okay, maybe a bit partial, but when it's put in behind the leg of the foot of the hooker, so that he can't even hook the bloody thing, that's when people turn around and say this is a load of bloody nonsense, which it is.
Yeah, no, you see, there you've delineated the difference. When we get the stupid ones, we need to get the stupid ones. And sometimes you can always have a one and done. Say, you might catch out of the corner of your eye, the scrum half does something, and you turn to a Danny Kerr and say, mate, come on. So, don't make me make that decision.
No,
you need to
him. Don't talk to him.
Right, it's fine. No, it's fine. But if we use that analogy across the game, that no matter what happens, ping it, just referee it. We go back to where we were in previous iterations, where teams go, we don't want the ball. If you're gonna blow every tiny possible offense, we'll defend, not give away any penalties, take the ball, kick it to the corner, maul and score.
No, so, just referee the cardinal laws. Absolutely, make sure all referees are on message about them, and then you eclipse that problem.
But then you need to agree what the cardinal laws are. Well, then you're in clear and obvious land.
And when you start talking about
blind alley, because some things are clearer and more obvious than others.
Well, how about putting in the ball straight for a start? I mean, you can make these partial judgments, but fundamentally, most people understand the principle of something being put in straight.
It's not what's written in law.
Put it in straight.
It's not what's written in law. So that's the big
Not
problem.
Now it isn't.
Not now. And yeah, you can petition to get it changed. That's fine. But you're asking a referee. It's currently the ball is the middle of the tunnel is a ball width apart, and the ball has to touch it at any stage, so it can roll sideways. But you're right. When it's just thrown to the number 8, we all agree on that. That's no problem. But also, if we say,
don't,
right,
that's the problem, JP. We don't. Some referees allow it, others don't. So that is a real problem, and it's devaluing the scrum, which we can have an argument about it being almost the core element that defines the game.
Nick cares about this, JP. Nick cares about the scrimmage.
No, it's great. Look, it's great. We want people to have passion in rugby, and if there's no passion, there's no support. So what's the point? But the issue is let's get the ball in the center of the tunnel, whatever we describe that as, and let's have a good strike if you have a strike by the hooker, it affects what the attacking team can do. If the ball gets the number 8 cleaner, he can then decide to play away or have a second push. You can have that contest. 2 World Cups have been decided on, Pameli Paganye, no scrum, no win. That has been the way forever, and it will continue to be that. Mark my words, when big games happen, the scrum is no scrum, no win, as the French say. That is realistically where you're going to go all the time. That's why the body shapes stay the way they are to a large extent. We're getting better and better athletes, but you still need props. Props are props, whether they're playing a Thanet Wanderers thirds or Blairgowrie firsts or Scotland team. Props are props. We need them to do certain jobs.
Can I first of all, thank Nick for his passion. Second of all, park that discussion slightly, just because I know we've only got JP for another 35 minutes. JP, I wanted to ask you about something you said during Rugby World Cup 2023, which was that referees shouldn't be pitied. I think I'm right in saying, and I wanted to ask if you'd watched Whistleblowers. I presume you have, the documentary that came out in February. And I wondered if you felt that Whistleblowers was a sort of not active rebuttal, but rebuttal to that, in that a lot of the footage you saw, the opening about Wayne Barnes and the messages he receives, or Jacko Piper having to take his kids out of school, whether that naturally invoked a sense of pity towards referees.
Yeah. Oh, humanistically. Yeah. And my point around this is when they say refereeing is so hard. And I said, oh, well, don't pity them, because being a 9 is very hard. Being a 10 is hard. Now, what you saw in Whistleblowers is online abuse or offline abuse or threats, and those things they're abhorrent. Like that is what it is. But that's the same for 9s. The guy, the guy misses the penalty for England, Marshall Rashford, he got abused. Players, referees, officials, public figures will get abuse, and it shouldn't be tolerated. And the points raised in that, and what the work Wayne Barnes is doing with the law councils actually prosecuting that kind of stuff, 100% agree with that. I mean, when people say how hard refereeing is, and I'm saying, well, don't pity us. You get trips to South Africa and Australia and Fiji and, lovely golf trips. And there's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful sides of refereeing. Absolutely brilliant. 95% plus of refereeing is magic. The social media and some of the personal abuse and attacks, look, the whole world is in agreement with that, apart from the trolls who are doing it. Everyone is, and I would assume that none of the five of us go on our phones and start abusing our mother if she's cooked a bad dinner. This is ridiculous behavior by people, and it should be stamped out. But as far as refereeing being something that should be pitied, refereeing is the best job. It is brilliant. It is so much fun. You make friends for life. I've seen 30, 35 countries of the world that I never would have seen, from Samoa to Morocco to South Africa 1,000 times. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I think that needs to be.
You've been to Wales?
I've been down to Wales,
Yeah,
and
good.
always
Yeah.
in the dark and in the rain,
Yeah.
but I've had some
high up
trips
on the
down
list.
there.
So maybe
And
it's 94% good, not 95% good.
Some of the best European trips on is being in the pub afterwards with the Welsh supporters, win, lose or draw, singing songs, having pints, getting loads of abuse off them, but the right kind of a banter abuse. You were rubbish. Yeah, grand. You're always okay, great. Here, have a pint. The very Irish natural way of doing it. And I'm a huge fan of that. Rugby's amazing. What other sport is worldwide can a referee just walk into a pub and have pints with supporters from Team A or Team B? It's fantastic.
Talking of banter, JP, one thing that exercises us trio a bit is all the players having their say on the pitch. Now, obviously, you've got the captain. He legally is allowed to converse with the ref. You probably have to talk to the scrum half a bit because he's so involved. But it seems to me that just about everybody on the pitch now has their tuppence worth to chip into the ref. And that must make it really difficult. But do refs also a little bit to blame in trying to do the banter, get on with the guys, they perhaps overdo it a bit. Where are you on that?
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty clear on this one. Like on the pitch, your job is to be the blue jersey, the yellow jersey, the white jersey, to be the referee. You have a role to produce. It is not your job to banter with players and create gags and all that kind of stuff. However, if a player is having a good moment with you, humanistically, if that's natural to you, you have that moment back. That's fine. But it should always be in return to how they're treating you. You should treat the players how they treat you. So if they're being really good, I was lucky enough to do, like say a Toulon Cardiff game with Johnny Wilkinson and Sam Warburton as captains. No one would speak to you for 2 hours. And you do other games with other captains and everyone would speak to you every 12 seconds. It's the relationship on the day and the dynamics on the day. There is a line. Everyone's aware of where that line is. Sometimes referees blurred and we get it slightly wrong. That's okay. We'll adjust for next week and we'll bring it back. But what we want is rugby is a very complex game where people are being very physical. They're in a war footing in a way. It's very combative. It's the sort of mechanisms.
The heckles are up.
Yeah, it's really tough. So people sometimes need to understand the decision because they haven't seen it. They're face down in the dirt, or they thought they made a legal tackle and something slightly different happened. They need to understand the why to get a change of behavior. So there is an element of that where football, everything is right in front of you. The left back can see what the right full forward is doing. Well, I don't think it's called a right full forward anymore. It's more Gaelic football. But you can have an opinion from 70 meters away. Rugby's more complex than that. So there is a need for dialogue. That needs to be done in the right way at the right times. However, that's not always achievable. And we as referees sometimes get that wrong and we improve and move forward.
A hell of a lot is said, JP, by coaches. People like Warren Gatland talk about this a hell of a lot. That the relationship between a captain and a referee is very, very important. That certain captains have ways of, in quotes, managing referees or managing their relationship with the referee during a game. From the referee's perspective, is that accurate? Is that an accurate characterization of what goes on? Are there better captains than others at not exactly getting what they want, but at least minimizing some damage that their colleagues may be causing?
Yeah, and I don't know what the secret sauce is, because I could tell you wonderful captains who I really struggled to get on with, but they were wonderful captains and they put me under tremendous pressure. And other guys who I did get on with who were terrible captains who just caused inflammations of scenarios. So it's neither being Steve Borthwick is a wonderful, wonderful captain, in the Saracens years, really difficult extremely difficult because he was about his team. I'm here for my team, and you need to do your job, JP, Mr. Ref. You need to get out there and do it properly. And I'd be like, yeah, you're right, actually, I do. And then you'd more collegiate guys like Sam Warburton, who wouldn't say boot to a goose, might speak to you once in a game. And that worked as well. So I'm not sure which way works and which way doesn't work. But I do know there are ways that work and there are ways that don't work.
That's really weird because those are exactly the two names I was thinking of. I mean, Borthwick, who's an incredibly nice guy.
Oh, tremendous.
But just fantastic. He's Eeyore on two legs, isn't he? I mean, he's fantastically sort of lugubrious. Whereas Warburton seemed to have people not eating out of his hand exactly, although that might have happened with Roman Poit in 2017. Yeah.
But that was maybe less to do with Sam, more to do with the situation. Like you asked Sam about this, and I have spoken with Sam about it. He'll say it actually really wasn't anything to do with him. It was more Roman doing that because of the pressure of the situation. And everyone credits Sam, and fair credit, take your credit when you get him.
Yeah.
Run for the hills, for sure. But, you know, Steve Borthwick was a fascinating character. Like, he'd come out for the toss and he wouldn't speak. He was focused on his job, like literally wouldn't speak, grunt, heads maybe, you get out of him. But that's it. And he'd just look at the other captain in the eye. You know, Johnny Sexton's of this world. I always use Greg Laidlaw as a really, really difficult captain. He used to put me under tremendous pressure because he was really bright and he knew what he was going to say and how aggressively he'd say it to me. And then other guys were more amiable. But I don't know what worked and didn't work. I just know some things work and some things don't. And it's an alchemy, you know.
And with England in 2003, the impression was that Jono captained the team. And normally Matt Dawson would manage the referee. He was the one who'd be the voice in the ear of the referee, and Jono would get on being Jono, I suppose. So sometimes it can be a 50-50 thing.
I don't remember any clips of Jono really going to the ref over the years.
No, he didn't much. He didn't.
He didn't have to just stare at him from 20 yards.
Is another great example. What a wonderful guy, and what a wonderful captain and servant to England, and ups and downs he's had in the role, but he was always very good and very pointed. Some other guys would just loiter around you. I really do not know what the alchemy is. Like, a wonderful captain was like Sione Kalamafoni, the Tongan captain, the Gloucester guy. And I don't think he ever spoke to me, but he was a wonderful captain. And I always felt like I should give him more, you know? So you just, I can't tell you what the alchemy is. Maybe it's a bit of like understanding that the person is a very impressive person and a better leader than I would ever be. But that's the key. Dylan Hartley, what a wonderful captain. But again, like, so many flaws, but great. I really loved him as a captain. So
Wayne Barnes didn't.
Well, you know, but that's a good example. Like, you can have the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs, the alchemy between people. Yeah. We're not all friends in this world, but we're not all enemies either.
No, sure, but I would imagine that one of the things that might, that might sort of move you towards liking a captain, if you like, is that if they're not in your ear all the time and that their timing is very, very good in terms of when they are.
Yeah, Greg Laidlaw was extremely good at that. He'd just come out after halftime and says, "Be interested to see if you still screw us in the second half, JP." I'd be like, you get me thinking.
That's when you should have yellow carded him.
Nobody say it to me coming out of the tunnel. I'd be like, where did he get that from? And he'd have all his teeth missing and he'd have gum shield out and he'd be like, "I'm going to get you." And I don't know. I just respected him so much. You know, I don't know. Different guys. Morgan Parrow was another guy I used to really love. Ben Kaiser, you know, just different people, different personalities. That alchemy. It's the best way I can describe it.
And what do you make it? Do you think Jamie George's timing is particularly good then? Obviously, Owen Farrell came up, but
I loved Owen Farrell. I loved the front word, but I think Owen Farrell was wonderful. And I had loads of running battles with him. I'm sure he thinks I'm the best, worst, or whatever in between guy in the world. But Owen Farrell was wonderful. I really enjoyed him. His commitment to, you know, trying to rip my head off. But Jamie George is the most impressive, lovely guy. I've known him since he was 18 years old. Brilliant guy. Couldn't have a bad word about him. But I don't know if that works either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they're very different, aren't they? Because like you say, Owen Farrell may try and rip a ref's head off. Whereas Jamie, it feels slightly more collaborative.
I'll give you what is really interesting. Skulkbrits is seen as the nicest, happiest, smiley guy in the world. And he is. And he's an unbelievable guy. Great golfer, wonderful rugby player, international, all that sort of stuff. Brilliant. I have so much time, respect
I
for him.
enjoy that golfer was first on that list.
Yeah, I think it will be first on his list as well. But he was also really, really difficult around scrum time. You know, he was a battler. He was a competitor. And I wasn't on his team. And you need to do your job, JP. Look, we'll have happy slappies afterwards. But right now, you need to do your job. And in his opinion, in that moment, maybe I wasn't doing it well enough. And he would let me know. So Jamie's the same. Like I've had running battles with Jamie before where mainly I've been wrong and he's been right. But these things do happen.
Yeah, of course.
Another thing there, JP, on the managing the players, you were one of the first refs I can remember who was definitely bilingual, very fluent French. I'm pretty sure you have a bit Italian as well. How important do you think in the modern era, now that you've got fully professional refs earning a good wage who have got the time to invest in some language lessons, to just have that in your armory, to be perceived to have made the effort to be bilingual, especially with the French, who over the decades have convinced themselves that it's a factor against them?
Well, I was just so desperate to not be dropped and keep getting selected. I thought, well, if I spoke French, it'd give me one more string to my bow. So, and being Irish while reffing in England, all my European Cup games were in France, you know.
Yeah.
I think I 50-ish, and most of them, 40 odd, were in France. So you're kind of half living there for weekends on time. My internationals tended to be with the French team, or teams who spoke French. So then I made sure I tried to learn Spanish for the Argentinian teams and so on and so forth, or Spain if I got them.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Italian teams as well. Just learn, like you'd learn maybe 100 words and then you build from there. I was lucky I was still teaching, so I just used to make sure I just taught all the French classes, you know, teach GCSE French, and then, you know, you're going to bump yourself up. So yeah, I think it's important, but it's a global game now. I don't think it's as important to the players as we make it out to be, but I think it's really nice if you can have something that's not instructional language. So if you can have conversational language with a player, it's far more amiable to, you know, to use a French word.
So when Tony Spreadbury famously said "Jouez, you plonker,"
yeah,
was that conversational or instructional?
I think he was talking to himself there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was doing some self-talk. He was way ahead of the psychology curve, and he was on the self-talk.
I mean, the occasion I think of particularly recently was the World Cup quarter-final, France-New Zealand, with Ben O'Keefe. Now, there were some fairly controversial decisions, but I'm not thinking so much about that. It was that he had a lot of little extra conversations with the English-speaking team as opposed to the French team. And it's just those little moments which
Ben is good.
The players perceive that as important. They think they're getting the full message of what they're doing wrong at scrum time.
I think it's really interesting because Ben is fluid.
And he said he deliberately didn't for some reason that night.
But that was to do with teams requesting stuff and what goes on in the nature of a World Cup and behind doors, and teams wanting X, and if English is the language we're using in the competition. I think there's stuff I'm not privy to, we're not privy to around that. But holistically, yes, I think it's important to try and speak those conversational bits that's non-instructional is preferable, but not essential.
Yeah. Speaking of that France-South Africa quarter-final, there's a law change that's being put in place by World Rugby, which for some has been interpreted as addressing that game directly, which is where the free kick can no longer become a scrum. Obviously, very famously, Damien Willems called a mark in his 22, called a scrum, and now that's effectively being abolished. JP, watch it. Obviously, some are interpreting it as targeting those instances in particular, and obviously teams like the Springboks where, like you say, no scrum, no win. What do you make of it?
You love invention, don't you? So that wasn't that one of the most fascinating moments of the World Cup, where everyone was like, oh my days, they've called it in their own 22. What if it goes the other way? What if the ref gets the rub here? What if the ref calls the wrong picture? Or what if South Africa don't get the dominance? What if? So yeah, look, magnificent bit, but maybe the charter they're working to is we want more ball in play, we want more flow, we want more teams taking it away from the referees and away from referees making decisions into you play against us and you have to do what you have to do in play. I'm not sure, but they'll have a driving force behind what they're doing. Now, the one thing I will say about say lots of things, but one thing about the law changes is the law of unintended consequence. Okay, so once you've done something, you don't know what it's going to cause. We've all watched Jurassic Park. We know that nature finds a way, you know, they will procreate, something will happen. So out of all these law changes, unintentional things will happen. And we have to see, like throwing a stick into a river, we got to let the sediment settle down, see where we are in a year or two's time, to how, because we've had loads of global law trials come in over the last 20 years that have gone back out, collapsing them all, and free kicks for all sanctions that are at the breakdown, for example. So we've had some big changes that haven't changed, and some that have come in that instantly made the game better, such as lifting in the line out, or 50-22s, or, you know, one that's come in that where people are maybe still 50-50 is when you're held up over the goal line, instead of a scrum 5 to speed the game up, it's a dropout. But some people are like, yeah, but you've earned your way to get there. Is that too much of a penalty to go back? So there are some that are still betting in, there are some that have been wonderful, and there's some that we just have to you know, we just have to see what comes as we go down the track.
So when it comes to law changes, and as Nick said earlier, we have many, JP, and we talked about grey areas. Just going back very briefly to, I'm not picking on Garces here because there have been other examples, but when a referee is embedded with a national team,
yeah,
is his role to coach, if you like, or enable the coaching of a side to stay on the right side of the law? Or, and here's me cynical streak, is his role to say, if you do that, you're going to get pinged every time. But if you do it this way, most often you'll get away with it?
Neither, both, and all at the same time. So multiple things can be true at the same time, and not the reality of the situation. So when you're embedded with a team, whether it's Scotland 20s with me, or whether it's Romain Poit at Toulon, or whether it's Laurent Cardona at Bègles Bordeaux, and the French team, and there are loads of examples around the world. What it does is it makes your training sessions better. So you're there to help and facilitate training sessions to create more live scenarios. You can prep on the refs coming in, what they're likely to do, what they're not likely to do. You can build loopholes into how you attack stuff. It can bring more creative ideas. It can inform the coaches to where the peripheries are. Jaco Piper does a lot of work with South Africa, and now he's attached to South Africa going forward under Rassie. So it gives all these different things. And like anything, the head coach, the boss, the chief, whoever it is, will decide how he uses it. So I've been involved in the England team, for example, where you're just there to help a training session and then get in your car and go home. I've been involved in teams where you're brought in to present and look back at games, look at referees coming in. It will depend on what the head coach wants from his scrum coach, his breakdown coach, his skills coach. Is the skill coach given 5 minutes a day to work on skills, or is he given 45 minutes of the training session? What you use your resources to will be individual. It's not as nefarious as you think it is, that, you know, it's like D'Artagnan planning in behind. It's not that. It will be what it will be, and moments will happen. Whether it's Rassie or whether it's the French or XYZ. And I like invention. I like problem solving. That's probably why I enjoyed refereeing. And I think these new things that creep in, Conor O'Shea with the Italian team finding loopholes, that's rugby. That's what it is. And it's for us to, you know, maybe change laws, maybe not, maybe look at interpretations, maybe look at how we balance things, how we communicate. But I like referees being embedded in teams. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you talk about, letting the sediment settle, what they need to do with these trials is let the sediment settle, not knee-jerk apply them, you know, just because they've had what they think is a successful trial because of that law of unintended consequences. This thing with the scrum is yet another hit on the scrum. You know, the dropout is a hit on the scrum. This is another hit on the scrum. If you look at what happened from that Willemse calling of the scrum from the mark,
It's the game, yeah.
They attacked off it. They went, you know, 30, 40, 50 meters down the field after that. And that's because, you know, there are 16 forwards tied into a battle for possession. People talk about space, continuity, etc. Where are you going to get that better than off a set piece like the scrum that keeps all of those guys in a tiny portion of the field? You know,
yeah. And look, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So people will be studying the footage to find ways around the thing that has just happened. So it's a really interesting thing. The Bath Gloucester, ping pong with the forwards all standing in the middle of the pitch. Yes, it's ridiculous. This is crazy. But we've seen these things happen before. The non-compete line out, the maul, you don't want to make it a maul in live play, so you don't add the third player. So you have two guys standing up. You've seen it in the sevens, and it can just stay there for a minute or two, and then we got to find a way around it. So we almost need these moments of incredulity to find the next spot. And that's kind of our silly game. It's a crazy game. It's a crazy invasion game. It's like all the other invasion games are really simple. Basketball, hockey, soccer, they're all easy to follow. Rugby is like, if I just said, well, rugby's an invasion game, it's just all I have to do is take this ball, this bit of equipment, and touch it over that line. And look how much we complicated just the simple fact of doing that. Like, it's madness. But there are 6.7 tries now per URC game. Like, we've never had that before. There's only 10 scrums in every game. The ball in play is up around 40 minutes. The game duration is coming down to around an hour and 40. We're heading matrix-wise in all the right places, but we probably need to get that narrative out there.
You sort of alluded there to all these adjustments and then counter movements. And I think it's interesting the discussion we were having about the TMO, which obviously the TMO was introduced and not to take time away from the field, but as a result, time was taken away from the field. And now there are countermeasures, like you say, with the education you're imparting, but also rugby in general, to not lean on it so much. It feels like the 20-minute red card trial is sort of not a counter movement to not make rugby safer, but it places less emphasis on the consequence of a dangerous tackle. Do you think that is in short what law changes are? Is it's movement and then counter movement, or analysis?
Yeah, it seems to be. The bunker is another example. We don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction on the pitch. The Freddie Stewart Ireland-England game, we don't want something that could have been, maybe should have been a yellow, in the first minute of an Ireland-England game. We don't want that, then it to be the wrong decision. So we go to the bunker so we can investigate more, so we're not standing on the pitch looking at a screen with 80,000 people going, what's going on here? I think, you're going to get this yin and yang. It's just how our game works. I am not smart enough or paid well enough to do all that kind of stuff. I basically just watch URC, BCR international games and feedback to our group of what we are doing. Let's make our job the best we can. Let's bring as much additive. So as I always say, if Ollie, if I'm coaching you, you're appointed to the game. If the game was only a 3 out of 10 and it wasn't a very good game, could you have made it a 4 out of 10 by what you brought to it? You're never going to make it a 9. But if you have a 9 out of 10 game, don't make it an 8 out of 10 game or a 7 out of 10 game. So what do you bring in additive-wise, either through work rate or attitude or joie de vivre, or what do you bring into the game? And I think that's where refereeing can move forward. All the stuff around law adjustments is nothing really to do with referees. No one ever asked any ref. I know, like, some refs sit on councils and there is a bit there, but in general, no one taps you on the shoulder. Hey, JP, what do you think we should do with, lifting in the line out? It's none of my business. You're just there to referee the game. You're a paid employee to be an additive part of the game, not the other way around.
It's funny you say that, because one of our questions for your Quickfire 15 is, what rugby law would you change? So I think on that note, if we can do the Quickfire questions, and we'll get your answer there as well in due course.
Yeah.
Nickname?
My nickname? I was called Butsy at school, but yeah, Doyle is nothing. I was called Butsy at school.
Why?
Just small and stocky like a cigar butt on the ground. These things come from nowhere, don't they? So, yeah.
Best rugby memory?
Best rugby memory. My very first game at Claremont was the 100-year anniversary there. It's pretty lovely. Yeah.
But most embarrassing rugby memory?
That's too many. There's too many. Telling Paul Hodgson to chillax on the pitch because I couldn't tell him to shut the mic up.
Pre-game tune?
No, you used to love the ambience. So at a French game, listening to the band, tout ensemble, like, yeah, that would be my pre-game.
Post-game meal?
Pizza.
Nice. Best player you've refed? As in, ability-wise, best player you've refed?
Johnny Wilkinson. Had to start laughing a few times. Yeah.
Favorite player you've refed?
Someone I could fight with. Probably Dylan Hartley, yeah.
Is he the most difficult one you refed as well then?
No, there's plenty. Probably Steve was the most difficult, but he probably wouldn't
Yeah.
fight with me all that much. He'd probably just be right.
Not
Just
a lot.
yeah.
Favorite player right now?
Favorite player, Jemison Gibson Park. I think it's
Good.
Anton Dupont. I think we're going to get such a special European Cup final.
Yeah.
The two most exciting players in World Rugby. But I also do like George Hendy. I think he's sort of the new fun guy to watch, isn't he? And I still love watching Zebo. So lots of answers there. There's a
Rugby idol.
Rugby idol. And look, everybody's was John Olomu growing up. Who didn't have the John Olomu tape of him, just the schoolboy games, and when he first that New Zealand trial he played in. Remember the black shirts versus the white shirts. Everyone was George and Juice van der Vesthuizen. They were the ones, weren't they?
Was there any Jonah Lomu and Butsy?
No, God, no. Contact. Are you mad? Why do you think I smashed my spine up? Why do you think I ended up as a ref? It's no strength or ability.
Favorite stadium.
Favorite stadium. Pac Thomond.
Favorite gym exercise. You can say what bike.
No, favorite gym exercise. Overhead squat.
No, wow. Okay, that's a new one. As in with the bar above your head.
Yeah.
Oh, they're horrible.
The clue's in overhead.
All right, Chris. Just wanted to check. Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
A primary school teacher.
Superstitions.
I had to make one terrible decision in every game.
So if it got to the 79th minute and you'd had a clean slate, perfect.
I never got that far. It's like make a bogey early. Every good golf friend starts with a bogey. Same thing in my refereeing.
Do you know instantly when you've made a howler, JP, and what do you do?
Yeah, and the best thing is if you don't know, there's a big screen which will show you exactly what you've done wrong. And I had that at Claremont. I had it at Claremont, famous one, and Joe Worsley was coaching Bordeaux, and he was just standing on the side and looked at me going, "What the flip are you doing?" And I just walked over and I said, "Joe, I'm so sorry. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'm so sorry."
Here we go. Rugby law you would change.
I'd have a mute button on referees.
Really? Okay. So
I could say what I really wanted, hit mute and turn around and go, like the kill switch.
Yeah.
I'd have a kill switch for referees. Yeah.
I'm not sure
not a kill referee switch. That's
different.
But also debatable.
Oh dear. Best thing about working in rugby.
It's the most unbelievable way to spend a lifetime. I'm so privileged and proud to have done this for the last 20 years. The people on, off, around the pitch, everything to do with everything. You meet the superstars and you meet the everyday workers, and it's all part of your role, and you're so blessed and how well you're treated. Yeah. Absolutely.
So tomorrow you'll be with the everyday workers, will you?
Everyday workers, yeah, I'll be.
Yeah. Because we, of course, are.
No, tonight we have a Super Series meeting tonight, so we'll be in normal rugby tonight. Yeah.
Amazing. That was a fantastic 15 questions. I think that was the best one we've had in quite a while. So thank you for doing that, JP. That was a great series of answers. We've got 10 minutes till you're on a watt bike slogging it out with your brother and Luke Pierce. Did anyone want to ask JP about any other laws while we've got him here? If not, we'll sort of transition into Gallagher Premiership stuff.
I think if we start on laws, we could be another hour. So I think we'll do the listener a favour and go to.
I'm a little bit relieved by that answer. I won't lie.
Is there anything about scrums you'd like to raise, Nick?
Don't. Please don't.
Talking
I'll
of kill
that down
switches.
at source. So Gallagher Premiership, obviously, well, it's a huge weekend of sport generally because we've obviously got the in the other shaped ball sport, we've got a Super Saturday. And we've got a Super Saturday in Gallagher Premiership form as well. 5 games, all starting at 3:05. JP, you said you'd been watching primarily URC. Have you been watching much Gallagher Prem stuff as well? Are you in a position to give us a little?
Yeah, I do watch a bit. I think the hardest thing and what rugby probably needs to address is the multi-platform issue. So if you have Premier Sports as it is now, and you have Amazon and you have Sky Sports because Rory's playing again this week. It's difficult to have BT as well, so you catch bits and pieces. I think the Premiership is in a wonderful spot in how it's produced, shown live, and the games you're seeing. Obviously, an unfortunate situation with the Gloucester game this week. That doesn't service anybody, but sometimes there's more backstories to that than meets the eye. They've obviously got a big game next week, so.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, look, you've got to get going. All I'm going to ask you, if you can give me your predicted semi-final lineup.
I think the top three are fairly I think Saracens are at home to Bristol. Is it this week?
Sale.
No, Saracens are at home.
Sale.
Home to Sale. And Sale, I would never, ever, ever count against an Alex Anderson team. I just never would. Just that team, it's got a better than a puncher's chance every single time, no matter who they're playing. But Saracens, maybe they're on, in the words of the Blues Brothers, maybe they're on a mission from God, and this is their year to do something really, really good to finish off that era. The three it was only marketed as the two, but the three Vunapola's leaving.
Yeah, Manu's leaving as well.
Manu, yeah, I don't know where he's going, but I just saw that. So
Billy Vunapola wants to do it for the shirt he isn't wearing.
For the shirt he's not wearing. Well, I used to sort of I was in school with him at Harrow, and I wasn't. I was one of the peripatetic teachers at Harrow there when he was there. He's a lovely guy. God, Billy's a great guy. So yeah, I think the top two. It'd be interesting Northampton, because Northampton need a win really badly. I don't think they can afford another loss. And then you've got Quins who are nuts. They're like giving your kids a whole load of sugar and then sending them into a room full of china. Like it's bananas what they do. So you can't count against them. So, but I do think Sale might be the ones to miss out, and then maybe sneaky Exeter, because I never bet against Rob Baxter, because he's an unbelievable coach, and Ali Heifer and the likes down there. So yeah, I just think it's a proper Super Saturday. I think the Premiership is very lucky to be set up this week, and hopefully the I guess it's 4 games. There's one kind of den rubber in there with the Newcastle Gloucester game. Yeah. I hope the 4 referees have a good weekend. There's nothing too difficult for them. And then we're the following week in the URC, we're in full blitz mode then as well.
So just to unpick that, your top 4: Northampton, Sarries, Bath, Exeter.
I think the way the fixtures fall, that's. I did see they put out the percentage chance, and actually Quins have a higher percentage chance statistically at 31% than Sale at 28% and Exeter at 25%. But don't call me a nerd for knowing all that.
I'm very surprised by that.
In fairness.
That's quite a sad note to end on, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. You've never met a rugby
player until that moment, JP.
Oh no, I love that.
You guys are rugby pigs. You're not even close, lads.
I'm surprised by that though, because Quins' points difference is shocking, and they've got 1 fewer win than everyone as well.
Yeah, that's just the data ongoing into the last round percentage wise.
Wow.
That's their.
I think the theory is they're more likely to get a bonus point at home off Bristol than Exeter are away at Leicester.
True. Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll go over the permutations in a second. I'm sure we're all pretty well. JP probably knows them to a T, judging by the stat he just came out. Well, anyway, you've got to focus on some Wattbike statistics instead of some Gallagher Prem statistics. So I wish you well in your race. And you said Super Series meeting tonight. So yeah, great having you here. Really, really great having you here. And I hope everything goes well for you in the future.
Yeah, give me a call anytime, guys.
Thank you, JP.
Thanks so much, JP. Take care of yourself. Bye. Guys, we will do a quick sort of 10-15 minute. I think that Gloucester game is worth a mention. It's a bit bizarre that it's the biggest talking point of last weekend, given everything that happened. Chewy, you're shaking your head.
I don't agree at all. I think it's an absolutely critical point.
Yeah.
But it's bizarre. I mean, I agree that it should be the biggest talking point, but it's bizarre that out of everything that was going to happen last weekend, it's come out as being so after what happened.
The Premiership leagues. It's not just the Premiership. I mean, so many leagues at the back end of the season leave themselves open to this. It happened last year when Saracens sent the under-11s down to Bath, and you had a great big packaging of Bristol v Gloucester competing for the last remaining Champions League place, whatever Champions Cup place. whatever it was. But the game became irrelevant. Everything was irrelevant down there because Saracens decided not to play.
Yeah,
and
but
you can pass it however you like. Gloucester, like Saracens in that game last year, Gloucester went to that game knowing they could not win. They weren't even bloody trying to win.
no. And what an indictment that is of a
Yeah.
professional sport.
Yeah.
And the way in which the leagues are run. Look,
Making money under false pretenses, Nick, from the supporters.
Absolutely. Trading under false pretenses is absolutely right. It's a disgrace. And it's got to be sorted out by promotion and relegation. This idea that we're looking at a wonderful league. Look, 8 teams qualify for the European Champions Cup, or what I call the European Cup. That tournament has been devalued by the fact that there are so many teams, most of which are also Rands, or at least half of which are also Rands, now clogging up that tournament.
It's harder not to qualify.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, the idea that you've got every time in this, if you're down to a 10-team league, you've got, in every 5 matches, you've got 2 that are effectively with Gloucester and Newcastle also Rands for most of the season. You've got almost, you got 40% pretty well of the of the matches really meaning very little. You look at this run-in and what these blowouts, when when Newcastle lost by 85 points, and now this one. Look at the impact they're having on, if it comes down to points difference or whatever else. Look at that impact. The knock-on effects from this sort of thing are very, very damaging. Very damaging indeed. I'm not a Premiership cheerleader. I do believe that there's been some very good attacking rugby played, but when it came to the crunch in the European games and they came up against sides that had, getting on for international class defenses or very good defenses, both of those teams came unstuck. That's the nature of the Premiership at the moment. But the bottom end of the Premiership, the fact that there's no jeopardy, the fact that it isn't competitive all the way through at both ends of the table is a travesty in a professional sport.
I mean, from what you're saying, that's what stops something like this happening. Reintroducing relegation, and all of a sudden you don't get a Gloucester team that is, a 3rd string side.
Absolutely.
Also making Champions Cup qualification a whole lot harder.
Yeah.
If it was for the top 4 rather than the top 8, that gives you a bit of a different shape. Yeah. The only thing I'd slightly disagree with Nick, and I'm on board with 95% of what he said plus, is Gloucester for most of the season were a lot more competitive than Newcastle were. So, but I absolutely agree that 1 game in 5, so 20% of your Premiership programme every week, was a waste of space.
And actually, it was funnier on Saturday because almost the same Gloucester team, in fact, a slightly weaker team, did okay at Saracens. They got a bonus point. I think they lost something like 45-28, something like that. I mean, that was an abysmal performance by Gloucester. Yeah. And albeit Saints were, Gloucester seconds. So they just clocked off. That was a holiday. That was just not a day at the office for Gloucester Rugby Club.
But Brendan,
as Nick says, is totally unacceptable in a professional sport.
Brendan, we see this clocking off. We've seen this clocking off go on right the way through the season. They're handpicking games that they're going to be competitive in a lot of the time, And part of these processions where you get, you'll get a team go up, score 4 tries, and they look as if they're racing away with it. Then the other team will come back and score 3 or whatever, and you get this sort of. Yeah, I mean, it is, it's what we criticize Super Rugby for.
Yeah, it is.
Stage, and it's happening here now. And look what happened there. Their crowds dwindled, their TV audience dwindled, because in the end, people realize that they're being sold a turkey.
Yeah, and you had it in the Champions Cup with the Bulls.
Yeah,
coming to Northampton with no players.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shocking, really. I mean, right back in the day, what Wasps, bless them, were brilliant at this, and you could see the way they thought it through. I mean, when Gatland was coaching there, they signed Rob Howley. Rob Howley plays the first game. It's a big signing. He plays the first game. He's not playing the second week. And Rob thinks he's done something wrong. I'm used to playing every week, says Howley. Gatland says, well, you ain't playing every week here. You'll be playing in the games we need to win. And that's at the back end of the season. Because, of course, you had the playoffs. Or Wasp wanted was to be on the top 3 or the top 4, however many it was at that point. So they were almost by definition prepared to give away some games or not go full tilt at certain games. Well, that's okay if you're planning your season, but it's not okay for a bloke who's just paid 30, 40, 50 quid to sit in the stand expecting you to give everything.
What I'd say to that, Chris, is that if you look at Wasps, they got the playoff system. That's what they are.
They did, absolutely.
But they were always competitive because the players that they were bringing through beneath the Howleys and so on and so forth were also bloody good. I don't think they were ever a non-competitive side in the way that we're seeing now.
Oh, no, not to this level. I agree with that.
Do we think that this also points to the schedule? Because I mean, watching, you get players now that obviously, like we're saying, don't want to play every game because, quite frankly, their bodies can't afford to. Hence, a team like Gloucester can pick and choose the games where they really, throw their cards into it or whatever. And you saw, I don't know, the football last night when Edison had to go off or Bentanker had to go off. They were fuming to not be playing in those games. And you feel like rugby's schedule is just so heavy nowadays that, to be honest, Ruin Ackerman, who was a guest a few weeks ago, or Zach Mercer or whatever, they were probably quite happy to have a week off, put their feet up, rest, and charge up for the ECPR, which is obviously the more important game.
It's a really odd one, Ollie, because I'm going to not defend Gloucester, but I'm just going to try and get into their mindset here. They took the Premiership Cup seriously. So they put pretty representative sides out, and particularly at the end when they got a sniff of winning it. So they brought a deal of credibility to that, put together competition. And of course, they logged up quite a few minutes. Quite a few of the players logged up quite a few minutes. And also they've had a run in Europe. So they are a bit short on, the squad is gasping, it's falling over the line. But they chose to they took the Premiership Cup seriously. Others didn't. Others put out the team that Gloucester are putting out now in the Premiership Cup. So they made their decision, and they might win 2 bits of silverware in this competition. It does nothing for the Premiership. Absolutely nothing. It destroys the Premiership, or goes a long way to destroying some of the credibility. But you can see their mindset to a certain extent.
And I would hate, as you said last week, every time I open my mouth on the subject of Leinster, people get aggy. I'd hate them to get aggy, but I'm going to mention Leinster here because when you have a side at the top end of club rugby in Europe, call them a club, at the top end of club rugby in Europe, who can afford to have a player like James Lowe, who plays 1 URC game, one, over the course of a season, then other clubs are saying, how are we going to protect our best players? How are we going to maximize our best players for the games that are really, really important to us? Leinster can do it falling off a log because they have such a fantastic squad. Other sides patently can't. But the idea of resting players for very long periods of time and having the value of that shown in the trophies you win and the finals you reach has a bloody big impact, actually, on everyone else.
It's really interesting because one of the things that I thought about the game against Northampton, the semi-final, was that their decision basically to rest players for, I think it was certainly a fortnight, and might even have been longer in some cases, 3 weeks. In that second half, I felt that came close to backfiring on them.
Yeah.
So, there is the thing about resting players and who's knackered and who isn't knackered and so on and so forth. If we go back and look around 2003 and the amount of rugby that was being played by the top end players when England were, every game was a must win game. And for Wasps or Leicester, every European Cup was a must win European Cup. And every Premiership was a must win Premiership. I don't believe that this Gloucester side has had an extraordinarily taxing season at all. they've been, half of the games they've been sort of ambivalent about whether they won or lost. I mean, that loss that they had just before this one at home, the Gloucester lost at home. I'm trying to remember who to, but I mean, they were half cock, and the guys on TNT were in the bars afterwards, and the bars were all empty. They were trying to whip up some sort of post-match atmosphere, and there was none. Because
that's the Exeter you're talking about, wasn't it?
Say again?
Exeter.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nobody there because there's zero interest in a team that isn't really going to defend their home patch.
Yeah. No, it's bizarre. I mean, is this such a damning decision to field a team at such a, well, in theory, should be crucial point in the season, that if they do go on and win that Challenge Cup final, it all is just over a little bit of a cloud?
Well, that's the calculation that George Skivington and presumably the rest of the club have made. If they walk out of this season with 2 bits of silverware, I suspect they will consider that as a success. And they're being purely, and as everybody will be, they're being purely selfish in that. We are Gloucester, we've got to do what we've got to do. But there is the bigger picture, and it does nothing for Premiership rugby.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the side that they put out against Northampton. They've got about 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8 regulars in that side. There is no way that side should have gone down by 90.
That's what I'm saying. It was a stronger side that did much better against Saracens. The side they sent against Saracens was a really weak side, and they still got a bonus point, a try bonus. So it was just the attitude as much as anything.
Absolutely.
Think how bad they'd have been if they didn't have a defence coach on the payroll.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ollie, sorry to fire the bazooka at your question early on, but
no. I mean,
there's a serious issue here, and we're in the middle. We don't mention it much. I write about it, continuously, but we've got a championship. This moratorium is meant to end on promotion and relegation this next season. We wrote about it at the time when it came in, and I said at the time, wrote in my column, that if they agree to this moratorium, promotion relegation will not come back, or it will be an almighty fight in order to get it back. That almighty fight is what's facing all the clubs below in a league system that was predicated on promotion and relegation. We got a franchise league of 10 clubs who are playing Mickey Mouse games some of the time.
Yeah. No, and look, I totally agree with you that this is a big point of discussion and it has raised a lot of issues. All I meant was this time last week, when you looked ahead to those fixtures, you couldn't have foreseen that Northampton Gloucester would be the biggest talking point, but that's exactly what's happened. So
look, I mean,
it is.
On the positive side, there are some very good fixtures there, and they have come down to, with 3 clubs out of it and they're, gone bust, and their players spread around the league. The league, for the sort of top 6 clubs in the league, they are competitive against each other. There's no question.
I think that we're all in agreement that the top half of the Gallagher Premiership this year has been a resounding success. And so obviously, if you're being a perfectionist, attention turns to the bottom half. Let's spend the last 5 by just looking at that top half. Does anyone want a quick go at explaining the permutations, or are we?
No, that's your job, Ollie.
I'll try and be succinct. So top spot is between Saints and Sarries. If Saints win, they're top. If not, it is bonus point dependent, but Sarries are 4 points behind. If Sarries beat Sale, they're level with Northampton, but they have a better points difference than Northampton. Sarries, Sale and Bath can all finish second. Bath are playing Northampton at home and have to win that, with Sarries losing to Sale. Again, Sarries have the advantage because if they're level on points, because they've won more games, points difference is better. Bath needs 1 point. So if Bath win with a bonus or lose with a bonus point, they're fine. Exeter, like JP said, are favourites to go into the top 4. I'm slightly losing my mind by this point. But
I tell you what, you've done a very.
I'd leave it there, actually. Anything
You've done a very good job. I think that the real
when you're in a hole, stop digging.
I think
I was just getting to the hole, so I'm glad you interrupted me, to be honest. And Harlequins Bristol is a shootout, so it's a lot of crunch games all happening at the same time, all on TNT Sports. Go on, Nick.
I think that the really important thing is the projection forward as to how important a home semi-final is in this league as it comes to the close, because they've all beaten each other. I would say, most of them have cleaned up away from home on occasions. So how important is home advantage going to be for Saracens? I think it'd be important for Northampton, but for Saracens, I'm not absolutely clear on that. What are the thoughts?
Well, if I would start on a negative note, my fear about this weekend is it's distorted by Northampton fielding a weakened side. They've already bagged themselves a home semi. They can afford to lose against Bath and rest a bunch of players for a semi-final.
And I would add, by the way, they definitely, of all the teams, they could deserve. They had 2 huge Premiership matches before the Leinster match. They had the Leinster match, and then they put out a full team, more or less, last week. So they are absolutely justified in resting a few players.
So there is the threat of a bit of a distortion, which if they do it for perfectly legit reasons, which you've just outlined, Bren, it will still leave a bit of a taste. And it is what I think. I don't think Saracens worry massively whether they're home or away. I still have them as favourites to win the thing. I think they will do for Sale at the weekend, even though Alex Anderson will have very good reasons to throw the absolute kitchen sink at it. My sneaking suspicion is that Exeter will do enough at Leicester to pinch the last 4th place ahead of Sale and Queens.
Yeah.
And if they do that, the feather in Rob Baxter's cap will be of Sioux tribe proportions, because he's brought in, that's a whole new Exeter side. Start of the season, there were blokes there we never heard of. And you've got young players who have really, really developed during the season. I mean, the number 8 Thistleout can definitely play.
Yeah.
He can definitely play. We know a lot about the right wing now. That new number 10 or the kid at number 10, really, really very good. I'm so impressed at the way they've managed to reconstruct.
Ross Vincent.
So impressed with the way he's reconstructed.
The skipper, the Welsh David, he's had a torrid season, but he was playing superbly in the last couple of weeks.
Isn't he just? Yeah.
What a season he's had, really, in difficult circumstances. I thought they were superb last week. I mean, that was the best they played for a long time.
The Saracens thing is very interesting, because those 2 defeats against Bordeaux in the European Cup were, they were resounding defeats. They've had a few others as well. But I sort of think that emotionally, because of the departure of Farrell and the Vunipolas, they are on a mission. And I thought that the way that they took Bristol to the cleaners, despite being reduced to 13 men, I thought that they were very, very impressive. And
can you imagine how hard Owen Farrell's going to be trying for the rest of the season? I mean, just to use an extreme example, he's going to be off the scale committed. Owen.
By the way, did you see his Messi moment on Saturday? His little
flip. Oh yes, the little chip.
I mean, fair play.
Yeah.
The other thing at Sarri is, I think we highlighted it a month ago. Tom Willis is coming like a train at the end of this season. Billy won't be starting another match unless there's injury.
Yeah.
And he's putting his hand up for England as well.
You've been trying to find his shirt, wasn't it?
You can't make the same joke twice, Chewy.
Watch me.
I have for 100.
I've been doing it.
He's made a career out of it.
Twice doesn't begin to describe what I do.
It's taken 40 years for someone to tell you can't make the same joke twice. Northampton, Exeter, Sarries, Bath are my two semi-finals. Is anyone going to disagree with that?
That's where I am.
Well, I think Exeter could sneak in here, I think, but
even though Quins are somehow the percentage favourites, which I'll never understand, even if they do make it.
I just think
Chris said, that's the assumption that if they win, they'll win with a bonus point.
That's
it gives them a little bit of a shout.
There are so many difficult, equations. Exeter are capable of winning well at Leicester, given what we've seen of Leicester recently. Harlequins are capable. They're capable of blitzing Bristol.
Yeah,
it would be very interesting, and of course, you might have one of those situations where there's a long injury or something in one of the in one of the games, and that gives another contending side 5 minutes at the back end in the knowledge that they've got to score 2 tries or whatever it is. So there is a lot to keep an eye on.
I mean, Bristol's body language at the end of that Saracens game was pretty abject.
I'm not sure all this sweetness in light there. It has just a little whiff of fragility about it running down through the club at the moment. I don't think everyone, to use another cliche, and as you know, I'm actually constructed of cliches. I don't think everyone is absolutely on the same page at Bristol at the moment.
It's a huge weekend of sport, and we've got Super Saturday in the Gallagher Prem and Super Sunday in the English Football Premier League. So obviously enjoy it, guys. I think we're all tipping Exeter to make that 4th spot, with the top 3 staying the same.
Have the Crusaders won a game in Super Rugby yet?
Yes. Yeah, we're all tipping Exeter for the 4th spot, but not with a huge amount of conviction.
No. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Bristol as contenders, so I no doubt, given our track record in the 2023-24 season, they'll
come through all guns blazing. Yeah,
don't they need Saracens and Sale to draw or something? No, I mean there is.
Oh that could really mess things up, a draw.
Yeah. I mean, but Bath, there is a scenario where one of Harlequins and Bristol and Sale both make it at the expense of Bath and the other one, whoever Sale, sorry. So, I mean, who knows? It'll be very cat and mouse, so it'll be very interesting to watch, and we'll talk about it a little bit next week. But we've got Gordon Darcy joining us, of course, ahead of Leinster Toulouse.
We can talk about Leinster.
Yeah, I know. Chewy, you're banned from that episode.
Well, I just think they're a fabulous side, but there is.
He's already on Gordon Darcy's side.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon Darcy's just a back. If it was Andrew Porter coming on, I'd be a little bit in retreat, I think.
Let's get Andrew Porter.
Just bolted from the horse going on in one direction to the horse going in the other. Good.
Let's get Andrew Porter on and do it in person. And then for every joke that Chewy makes about Leinster, Chewy can get overhead squatted by Andrew Porter.
Yeah. Well, as long as he doesn't take me on in an arm wrestle, because that's when he won't win.
Andrew, are you listening? Right, guys, enjoy the weekend, and I can't wait to preview the Champions Cup final. That's going to be a cracker. See you next week.
Well done, guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.